morning, happy Friday to you, and welcome to Beyond the Sim with myself, Shaun Cole, and my co-host, Billy Strange. How you doing on this beautiful Friday, Billy?
Great. Yeah. What a turn in the weather for California. We went to really cold, torrential downpours over the weekend, and now it's almost feels like summer.
It's like when you see, well, for me, when you see Southern California on television, that's what it looks like now, right? I
There
mean,
you
it's
go.
just blue skies, and because we had such an incredible winter, it's all green mountains and
Yes.
green everything and blue skies, and it's like it's postcard-esque. It's incredible. So hard to stay in the house and sim race when it's so beautiful outside.
I know. I got my bike all prepped and ready to go do some riding. We have a really nice bike trail. It's about a 50-mile bike trail down the river
Uh-huh.
where I'm at. So
Oh, I'm
I got my
jealous. I'd love to
got my
have that
bike
kind of
installed.
riding. I don't have that here. I'm on some kind of scary roads because they're the canyon
Right.
roads that people who
Mm-hmm.
like to drive cars fast like to drive on those, and motorcyclists, and then you're the idiot
Yeah.
on a bicycle, and no respect. No respect.
No
So
respect. Well, hey, what this is episode 23. I
is it
think this is 23.
I think I lost count. I titled it 22, but I was questioning
I
that
believe it's
number.
23.
I'm gonna have to change that right now on the description. I don't know if it'll be active, but I got to get my head on straight. 23 episodes.
That's right. So you can also listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher apps. And if you're listening to us, if you're listening to this on one of those, you can also watch the video on the SImpit. There. Figured we should probably do a little bit better job at plugging those things.
Yeah, well, and I'm about to do another road trip, and whenever I do a road trip, I take
Oh, there you
podcasts.
go.
So finally, I'm going to be able to listen to our show. It'll be kind of cool to go back to listen to the early episodes. Actually, looking forward to that. So we are here to talk sim racing. What have you been up to this week?
Well, Tom wants us to take the cameras outside, so.
Oh, I think that might make people a little too jealous. I mean, I know the rest of the country is not suffering the same weather we are.
Well, you're down closer to, the coast, and I'm in all these rolling green hills and almost forest-esque landscape. Like it's kind of like farmland, but right there I can see it. You can
Right.
see all the forests and then the mountains. So yeah, people might be jealous. But anyway,
That's kind of my dream, is to live in that exact spot, like right at the foothills of where I want to go play, but I don't necessarily want to go live in those hills because it's a little more complicated. So it's like, no, but I want to be a stone's throw.
Spatial's here for the safety rating. That's funny. Okay. Coincidentally enough, that's going to be our first topic or first news item. But before that, I did some VRC Pro, did some races in that, won a couple of them. Beyond, gotta quit doing that. You can't say the show's name's title while you're being descriptive. So besides that, I've been all in on ACC whenever I've had a chance. I did a video, so shameless self-promoting plug. You can light me on fire afterwards. But
Where am I going to
I
find
did
that video?
do on Billy Strange Racing.
Oh, okay.
I did a 32-minute video. It's part one. I tried a different format. I'm just trying to do something a little different. So it is literally not quite a stream of consciousness because I really did edit it down, but it is me kind of coming to grips and understanding and giving my thoughts as I see things and or understand them or change my opinion on them. As I explained in the video, anybody that does a review on this that hasn't put at least bare minimum, I'm going to say 10 to 15 hours is really doing a disservice. Like, people did their streams and that's fine because that's kind of like a first impressions thing.
Right.
But there's a lot going on, and I'm not totally, even after 6 hours, we'll talk about it later, but you can kind of see my progress as I goes through. So that's what I did, and that's all I did.
Well, and that's super fair. Well, we'll come back to Assetto Corsa. Sorry, I was about to take one of those tangents. And before we take too long of a tangent, just so everybody knows, we are limited on time today. Today's show will be kept to 1 hour because Well, Billy, what do you got going on? Or should we do that later? What do you got going on?
No, I have another, unfortunately, the next recording session available was another Friday. Hopefully this is the last Friday that I have to do this. They've got other sessions next week. We're trying to get this done by August, because if we can get this done by August, we might have a decently good sized show lined up. So we're trying to get all that done. So yes, it's my fault. It's only going to be about an hour today, because then I got to run. Take me about 45 minutes to get to the studio.
Now, Tom says that in your latest video, there's actually an F-bomb, and that the first person to find the timestamp will win a new 4690K from you.
Well, it ain't going to be new, I'll tell you that.
Did you do 10 push-ups for your F-bomb?
I should do 10 push-ups for my F-bomb.
You know what's really sad? I talk about fitness and alertness and all that. I did 30 push-ups, because my new thing, whenever I swear online, on stream, I'm doing 10 push-ups for every curse word.
Okay, fair enough.
And so I did a F, 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 but the full word. And I did 10 push-ups, and Joe was like, dude, that was 30. What are you talking about? So I dropped down and did another 20. I was sore for 3 days. That is pathetic right there. All right, what did I do this week? This week, I had a lot going on, actually. I'm trying to remember everything. I did Assetto Corsa. I did a first look video, just getting in and doing career mode, which I put in an hour and honestly only got through 3 events. So I just to the point of beginning my actual junior career, not my testing. So I'm nowhere. And then I did 1 multiplayer race, which meant, pick your car, pick your track, ignore any build up or sequence of the game. And that's all I really did. And the only thing, that's what I did as far as the Assetto Corsa, and I did 2 streams.
It's hard not to just kind of jump into it.
It's the big topic of the day. It really is. I did some preparation for the Le Mans race this weekend, which we'll talk more about at the end as well. We're not talk a lot about it, and then I had a Lionheart race in the IndyCar, which was so frustrating. Once again, I didn't put the time in. So I have to point all the fingers back at myself. Now, I was race ready, just maybe one of the slower guys on the grid. But I was part of the grid, and I was, belonged there. I was competent in my driving ability, so I didn't think of myself as a liability whatsoever. I knew how to put the car wherever I needed and how to do whatever I needed to do with the car, except be fast. Just don't know how these guys are running a half a second faster on... I've always felt that I was a good IndyCar driver until I got here, and now I'm just so humbled. Anyway, it took everything I had in spirit and prep to be there for the race, and I just didn't feel like I'd put in what I needed to, but I was there. And so anyway, I'm just trying to be cautious. I'm doing it for the SR, right? I'm not. It's a league race, but I'm just like, don't be the guy, right? Don't be that guy. Once again, that's going to be the topic of the day.
For a personality that, or even for maybe just normal people racing amongst your friends, you just don't want to be.
Yep.
I think that's a good fear for most of us, is we don't want to be that person.
Those persons usually are not the ones causing the problems. The people who are just don't let me be the one. Now, I will say, with that said, I have made some brutal errors in this league. I just ran into the back. Tom Jones, look at that.
Oh, thanks.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you so much. Billy, vlog a bit in your car. Show off all that HP.
Uh-oh. Might get me into trouble.
Never put a GoPro on something you love. That's my rule of the day. If you want to see everything go wrong, put a GoPro on it.
Right.
Speaking of GoPro, I had a GoPro in the Lemons car for my last race.
Did you get it back?
Still haven't got it back. I'm wondering, did it just disappear?
It migrated somewhere.
Yeah, it's do I have to already... I had bought a GoPro and returned it. Man, we are a mess. I had bought a GoPro and returned it because I still already had one and the improvement wasn't good enough. And now I might end up buying that very GoPro again. So, in the end, I ran into the back of a car that had checked up for a little something up ahead. I was doing fine. I was holding my own, just waiting. I was kind of doing what I did at the last truck race, which was I had a good time last week in the truck race, where I was just really patient, just didn't care, and just la 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 la. And then at the end, I was able to make a smart decision and move up a lot of spots. And I was kind of hoping for that in this IndyCar race. And then I ran into the back of somebody, just totaled the car, and 11 laps I'm out. So that was really aggravating. But
I can only imagine.
yeah, but hopefully it'll motivate me. We're running at Mossport for the next race. I love Mossport. I'm hoping others don't. That's like, those are the scenarios that usually do well for me. When other people don't like the combination and I do, and I like Mossport. So, anyway, that was my week. And
Somebody's going to get you for Canadian Tire.
Yeah, I know. But you know what?
It's just like Sears Point.
I was going to say the same thing. It's Sears Point. It's Laguna Seca. Laguna Segway.
Hard for you to say.
Yeah, I'll never. You know what? And in all fairness in defense of my thinking on these things, is look at Laguna. It was Mazda. Now it's WeatherTech. They are going to sell the name to whoever wants to pay, but the track will still be the same, right? So I'm not going to go ahead and change the mentality of the name of the track every 3 to 5 years based on their financial outcome. I'm just going to call it Laguna Seca. They can add their sponsor name to their version of it.
It's kind of one of those things. People know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
now Sears is a little different because they've kind of they don't even call it Sears anymore, right? It's like Sonoma Raceway, I think.
Yeah, it's Sonoma Raceway.
So
whatever.
Everybody older, everyone younger than 30 would be like, "What is Sears? I've never heard of it ever." Right? Okay, that's what I did. So what's on in the news? You better run the show, man. I'm out of control.
There we go. Hey, and thanks for everybody everybody hanging out in chat. Thanks for being here. What are we doing? We're going on to iRacing.
Yes.
What are we going on to iRacing for? We are talking about the Pro 4 around Wild West Motorsports Park. Are you excited? I am excited to try this. I am really excited.
I was excited.
I know it's iRacing, and I know there's, obviously an exchange of money involved, but I am excited for this.
I'm super. And there's games, anybody who's old school remembers, like Soda Off-Road Racing.
I got that working on my PC. It's so archaic. Oh my goodness, I could not. I'd never heard of it, and I found it. I was like, I'll put this. Oh my goodness, that's bad.
Back in the day, it was a group of some hardcore sim racers from NASCAR, like Ilka Happala. We're talking alien level racers who were hosting leagues in Soda. Because it was really good at the time, physics-wise, and yes, now it would be very arcadish. But this just takes me back, because I haven't had, I'm playing the video right now, and just listening to those sounds, watching the way the cars, not just the way they're turning, but the way they're digging in with those outside tires, it takes me back, and it's like, there's always been a thing for me. I'm a truck guy. Anybody who doesn't know me, I am a truck guy, maybe as much or more than I am a car guy. I see a lifted Chevy go by, and I'm like, oh, or a Raptor, and I'm like, dude, I love big trucks. So I'm super excited about this. Super excited. Nice. And dirt racing will be fun.
Oh, Tom Jones, thank you. Oh, he wants you to do a 100% force feedback challenge with the trucks.
All right, you're on. You bought it.
There you go. Heard it here first. He's gonna do it.
I better write that down.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna make sure I watch this.
No problem, Tom. I'm gonna put my Thrustmaster TGT right on my wheel, on my base, on my.
I'm gonna put my T300 all the way up to full power. I'm gonna put my G25 all the way up to 100%. Oh, Jody mentions Leadfoot. Leadfoot was great because those were developers of the Dirt Track Racing and World of Outlaw Sprint Cars, which of course I played the crap out of.
Yes, Leadfoot was awesome too.
Yep.
So, I think
also even in was on the arcade-ish side, the Dirt 2 had those trucks in there, and those were a blast. Those, if you tried the little the copy of Ivan Stewart's Toyota when it was the 4-cylinder, the stadium truck.
Yeah.
You could be flat out and then get up on the banking and just rip around those corners. That was so much fun. So I'm excited.
I think this will make the rally cars seem somewhat tame.
By far.
They're snorting beasts, granted, and in a Gymkhana type of way, they're really, really awesome.
Sound badass.
Yeah, but But the trucks, man, these things fly. You know,
They fly. They sound badass. It's you got 2 and 4 wheel drive. It's gonna be great.
Oh yeah.
I hope. Cross my fingers.
Very much so. So yeah, I'm all over that. And then some other cars and stuff that we've talked about, but that is the big one.
Yep, Neon Knight, Rat Bag, of course.
Oh yeah.
Those of us that were into dirt, those were our developers for a long time.
Yeah, there's like a whole series that they went through and
Dirt Track Racing, Dirt Track Racing 2. Then you had the World of Outlaw game. Then you had Leadfoot. Then the PS2. One of the reasons I bought the PS2 because on launch there was supposed to be the 2002 World of Outlaw sprint cars, and it didn't happen. I remember it came later than it was supposed to come. It got delayed, and I was crushed. I was like, oh no. So. All right.
Lionheart mentioned he used to own an Iron Stewart off-road arcade machine.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Well, I went to a beercade last year, and that was one of the games they had there, like the 4-man. And I was like, oh, this is great. And, it's really hard to go back in time, though. Not everything transfers that
Dude, you got to spin. You got to remember, you got to spin the wheel. You just got to.
Yeah.
Yep. No, the one with the 3 wheels was the Ivan Lionheart and David are talking about. One with the 3 wheels was Ivan Stewart's. They did have a 1-wheel machine, if I remember right, too. Or maybe it was a 2-player. But the one I always remember is a 3-player. And then the Danny Sullivan Indy Heat one as well was the 3-player. Basic, same kind of thing. Those were great back then.
Oh, yeah. Those were some of my favorites.
Saturday Night Thunder by Robert. Robert mentioned Saturday Night Thunder. That was also another one where they did like the midgets, late models. Was it modifieds? It was something else in there, too.
The early arcade games with the spinny wheels, admittedly, are a big reason why I'm a sim racer. Because as much as I love playing my Galaga or, a million other games, man, was I into the driving games.
Mm-hmm. So, freaking spamming. You save up the nitro until the end. You start spamming it.
Awesome.
Oh, Saturday Night Thunder was the program. Saturday Night Speedway was the game. There you go. Okay, getting on a diversion here. I got to keep this short. On to Assetto Corsa.
Assetto Corsa, they're at Paul Ricard track for the second round of the SRO eSport GT series. So, I wonder, well, this is pretty much the biggest in the world of Assetto Corsa on the eSport side of things. What I dig is the venues, because they build these, like, really elaborate arenas. But then, like, I remember the last one, it was, like, really cool looking, but then there weren't a lot of people because they were, like, kind of off the beaten path.
Mm-hmm.
This photo shows that there's not a lot of room for an audience, but it's quite a nice layout with the rigs. I mean, they look awesome. They're all in, those look like R-seat F1 chassis from a long distance. Pretty awesome.
Okay, yeah, it does, huh?
So that's going on right now. They have 3 different divisions running: Pro, Silver, and Amateur. And the guys running in this, you know the names. I mean, when we talk about the winners, there'll be people that we all know. See, we're going to move along on a little of this stuff.
There we go. So are we on to dirt now?
Yeah. What's going on at dirt?
Yeah, dirt is just Dirt Rally is on sale 1 and 2. And then also the deluxe edition upgrade. So you got a Steam discount, PlayStation, Xbox, all over the map, all over the board. So if you haven't tried it yet and you were waiting for a sale, here's your opportunity.
Not bad. You knew it was coming. It's like so funny, the games. It's like, damn well you'll pre-order it at full fare. In the first few weeks, you're going to pay full fare. And then unless it's like a Grand Theft Auto level game, you can pretty much count on seeing discounts pretty shortly after.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto, I think they still charge $60 for it.
Oh, yeah, they do, because they keep selling it. They keep selling. How do people keep buying this thing?
I don't know. I almost bought a second copy because I have it on one system and I want it on the other.
I'm sure that's what people do. I'm sure that's why it keeps selling.
Yeah. All right, what else? This is kind of cool, or not cool. It's unfortunate for Sonic Saltunk. I should have my I got to add the disclaimer to this show because I'm a mess. This, we make a lot of speculation about eSport, and we talk about, how things are changing each year. It's so new, seasons 1, 2, 3 even. But that would be it. And we talk about jerseys and fanship and all these things. Well, the other thing that's going to start happening is if you have an annual draft in the case of F1 eSport, some teams are going to start releasing drivers. You know, it's the inevitable. You want the best. Saltunk, Sonic Saltunk, the brother of Sonk Saltunk, was the last person drafted last year, by the way. Disclaimer. I'll just put this like Saltunk. Oh, you guys can't. There you go. Saltunk. Nobody can read my writing. I write like a doctor.
I like the emphasis you're putting on tunk too. It's just it's not only probably being pronounced wrong. It's just so great. Saltunk.
So white boy.
Right?
He was
so
released.
American about it.
He was released by the team though. In NASCAR for years, not just NASCAR, that's across the board in sports. They've called this silly season. That when teams can start changing and trading and drafting new drivers, and it's, you know, it's a big deal in NASCAR. Like if you're a huge fan and somebody's contract is up, you pretty much know you're waiting on an announcement from what team they're going to go to. If you're a big fan of somebody and they drive a Chevy and you have a Chevy tattoo and their contract's up and all of a sudden they may go to a Ford because, you know, they're going to go where the money is and they're not going to care about your Chevy tattoo. But we are there. So this is the first story I've really seen on this magnitude or level where somebody on the eSport level, which means opportunity to win $500,000, loses their ride. You know, Sage Karam lost his IndyCar ride. You know, he was back at Indy. But, you know, a pro driver can lose their ride and be sidelined. And this guy, I don't know if there's
only so many spots available.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if there's a way for him because I know there's a bunch of new entry points into the draft. So cut from a team doesn't mean that another team can't pick him up. That means he's available to other teams and maybe one of the top
free agent
drafts. Yeah. And he might be able to, I don't know if he even needs to go through the process because some of the guys on the eSport thing didn't go through the official draft, if I'm not mistaken. Some of the like third drivers. So anyway, interesting.
Well, on Twitter, he just put his announcement. Unfortunately, my journey with Sauber Esports, I used to say Sauber, but I believe it's Sauber Esports is over. I appreciate everything they've done for me and having me on board with the team. Most likely gonna re-enter the pro draft. Hopefully can be a part of the 2019 season as I still want to prove myself on the track. Thank you. So short and sweet to the point. You know,
that would kind of suck if your brother was your teammate and he got cut and you still got a ride.
Right. Well, and that's the case is his brother's still on the team.
Yeah, I'd be.
His brother won last year a race. His best finish is 5th, but he scored 16th in the championship. So he's going to have to, for lack of a better term, reinvent himself to get on another team.
No, Paul, do not get a Chevy tattoo. Tom, do not get a SImpit tattoo. Izzy, do not get a tattoo of me.
Yeah.
I am not recommending anybody go get a tattoo.
I'm recommending it.
Are you?
Oh, yeah. I want to. It's not my body. Go ahead.
Do it. SImpit.
It's not my face, not my body. I want to see this.
Man, if you put a SImpit tattoo across your chest, I'll give you my Bodner wheel.
Oh, crap. He didn't say how big, people. Go for it.
No, I showed, though. Like this. It's got to be like the T-shirt version here.
I just thought you were pointing to one nipple or the other.
That is
this
all.
What happens. This is what happens when we're trying to get through it.
Yeah, we're actually kind of wrapped up with the news.
We are.
So, the one thing that we've had a hard time staying away from and talking about is Assetto Corsa. So this is actually one of those rare things. I don't know if we've had an opportunity since the show began where both you and I both tried the same game prior to a Friday show. I can't think of a time. I don't think so. I think this might be a very, very first. So what has your experience with the Assetto Corsa Competizione been? And what have you heard also from your community and people?
So, number one, it seems to be very split. It seems that people have very strong opinions one way or the other. I've seen a lot of people saying that they're not getting it because of a variety of reasons. I've seen people that have purchased it, don't care for it People purchase it and really like it. There is no like, it's just okay. It seems mainly like they either really like it or they really don't. I've also seen reports, I've looked at one myself, that the player base is smaller than Assetto Corsa right now.
Yeah, day one.
So, well, day one, it shouldn't be.
Right.
Day one, it should be,
Oh,
day
yeah,
one,
but
it should be big.
it was still shutting down their servers, though.
Well, I think that's just a symptom of not being prepared. And I don't understand why that's a thing still.
Like not being prepared.
Yeah, I don't understand. It's same thing happened with Dirt Rally and stuff. Why aren't you prepared? It's
right. Like
it's better to be over prepared than under, you know?
And here's the other funny thing is your management and sales team is over here watching the numbers, right? With certain expectations that they'd be let down if they didn't achieve, this one was less numbers than Assetto Corsa, right? But yet they didn't prepare for those numbers that they were hoping for and counting on,
Right.
It's like, well, wait, how I don't understand that, miss.
Really quick, Paul brings up something that I ran into since this is on topic. He says ACC won't let me leave the pit in Q2 and Q3 in career mode. So what you have to do is you have to go in and remap the buttons, and then it'll let you out. You have to remap your ignition and your starter every time, because that's the only way I got mine to work.
What if
even if you have it on automatic?
Even if it's auto engine start.
If it's on automatic, it won't. Once it hits Q2, it won't start. So you've got to go in, map those buttons every time you hit Q2, and if you do the longer session, Q3, remap I figured this out on my own, just like messing with it. I actually mentioned it at the end of my video. That is probably the most major bug. I've had a couple crashes. I had one crash to desktop. I had one actually freeze my whole PC though, and I had to do a complete restart. Wow. I don't know if I want to talk overall, because I've put about 6 hours in it. And like it's funny, I ran about 2 hours, an hour and a half prior in the early access, just to kind of get myself familiar with everything. And I got really good performance then. I got really good performance with the graphics and everything. Then version 1.0 hit, and apparently they did an update to Unreal Engine 4. Sorry, my brain froze. And it hurt some of the performance, graphically speaking. So I actually had to turn things down that I didn't have turned down before. I'm running i5 4690K, 16 gigs of RAM, Founders Edition 1070 on an ultra wide 1080p. It still looks really good, and it was running really well. And now it still looks really good. Just I don't have some of like the anti-aliasing isn't as good as it could be now, and a couple other things. So that's kind of a bummer. What else? I think this will feed into something else. I think that the force feedback, if you are dependent on force feedback for your enjoyment of a sim, depending on the car that you choose, you may really like ACC or you may not like ACC, because I found that the force feedback in this is just different. So if you like Assetto Corsa's force feedback, you may very well not like ACC's force feedback, because it just operates differently. It takes more of an iRacing approach, where it's taking the actual data, not giving us these added effects. I don't need to feel the back end break loose in the front end, but some people like that. So, and that's fine.
Right.
It's just something I don't need. So when I noticed when I was going from car to car, the force feedback varies wildly. And since they're using the data, I don't know if that's because of the weight of the car, like, the weight balance of the car and how it transitions. So if I would have driven the McLaren 650 as my first car, I would have absolutely hated the way this felt, just because it just feels odd. Mm-hmm. But I go and understand that this is my driving preference. I typically get along better with a front engine rear wheel drive car. So like the Bentley the Jaguar, the what I ended up picking in the career mode, the Aston Martin, which is funny because I see Nicky Tim hates the Aston Martin. I actually really like the Aston Martin. Like
Right.
that thing is in the track for me.
Now he would know. That's his
I know.
ride.
And so, that's not saying what is realistic. It makes sense to me, but who knows what settings we're on? Who knows, what you're coming from, what your experience is. That all plays a part in how you think of a sim like this. And I find that the Mercedes kind of falls flat on the force feedback, which is, again, odd because it's a front engine rear wheel drive car. I really enjoy the Lamborghini. There you go.
Yeah, the Lamborghini, which is stating basically the mid-engine cars of the game.
Yeah, so the Trofeo I really liked. I really liked the in race, the actual race GT3 car. Interesting that they included the Trofeo and the Cup car, which are slower cars that aren't GT3 Blanc Paul, however you say it. And yes, you have to do the when you're doing it. Interesting they included those. I understand that they kind of just drive around in their own class, but it's kind of like field fillers for no reason.
Right.
I'm confused by those cars. I do like the idea of the progression. It's giving you all these points of reference on how you're driving. One of the cool things I thought, which I haven't been able to replicate, is in the pre or early access version, I tried an event that you could go along and do all these, do 2 laps, do 4 laps, make sure you do this. And it was cool to watch like my progression. I couldn't get that to work in version 1.0. And people said it kind of works or it doesn't, which is unfortunate because actually I thought that was pretty cool. So you have a point system on your safety rating, all this kind of thing. I don't know what that does.
Right.
I've yet to find out what that
or how it affects things.
Right. The one thing I don't care for is throwing in arbitrary things that don't matter. So you'll have this, and then as I've gone through the career, I've done the first 2 races in the career, plus the test sessions. Well, there are test sessions in between. They don't seem to do anything. So why am I doing these if they don't do anything? They're not getting me better parts because I'm starting my own team. So they're not getting me better parts. Are they qualifying me for a better car? It doesn't tell you. So it's
just driving time because it's a driving sim.
Yeah, so I don't understand that. I don't care for that stuff. You do the short when you first start in the career mode, the length of race doesn't really tell you anything. I think that's a misstep.
Mm-hmm.
Why not tell me like how long the races are going to be?
Right.
So I picked short. I have no idea. Well, they end up being 10-minute races, and you got to do a pit stop in a 10-minute race. It's like, I understand that's what this series is, but in a 10-minute race, is it really necessary? It's the same thing that F1 does with the 15 or so minute races. They force you to do 1 or 2 pit stops. It's like, the reason for picking the short races is to race.
Right.
Like, that is your thing. You really want to race. The pit stop is not the main thing. Like, if I want to do a longer race with a pit stop, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like they're like, look, the whole blueprint for a race is green flag, pit stop, checkered flag, no matter what. So now it's just a matter of how much you lengthen the bookends around those parameters.
Yeah, David says for the multiplayer servers, you can set the server safety limit to help keep bad drivers out. And yes, you can. But is that taking your offline career? Is there a separate one for online versus offline, or is it all one? So can I race a bunch offline and then my safety ratings, relatively high, and then I can just jump into that? It doesn't explain it, I guess, is my point. Unless you saw something I didn't see. I didn't see anything.
That's the other thing about it being new is when it's really still new, you're still finding little things hidden, obscured by little spots, or, oh, I didn't realize that information was there. I got to drive about 3 hours, maybe a little over 3 hours. I did a little of the career mode, which was just at the rookie level. Like right when I got on a team is when I stopped running.
Okay, yeah.
And then I did a multiplayer race where we went through the whole thing, practice, qualifying, and the race to the point of checkered. And I've had a lot of fun with the Assetto Corsa Competizione. So, I mean, right out of the gate, I can tell you that when I was a little concerned about content, lack of content, maybe it being a very limited thing, I think we're going to be okay. There are a lot of different liveries in it, so when you get into a racing situation, you're going to have good grids of cars. We've already talked about the differences in the way the cars feel between the front engine, rear wheel drive, or the rear engine. I haven't driven the Porsche yet, or the mid-engine cars, and that could all make for some really fun racing. Now, I haven't been in a tight enough race to really see the differences because, honestly, everybody I was racing against was really fast, but everyone seems to still be struggling to find the limit. And so what I have found in Assetto so far is that I find it to be very easy to drive, and I'm wondering if they did this on purpose. I'm finding it very easy to drive at a reasonable rate of speed. And I'm finding it a little difficult to find the boundaries because the minute you get on the edge or over the edge, all of a sudden you're going to say, wow, this is actually a very difficult sim. Because all I did was give it a little extra gas and I just snapped it all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
And yet before I pushed it, that thing was glued to the ground. So I'm finding it really hard to find that magic sweet spot just yet. Now I only have 3 hours, and I always talk about calibrating yourselves, calibrating your equipment. I'm not sure I have my equipment dialed in. I was running way too much force feedback. Every time I do a session, I bring it down more, but I'm still running too much. So
yeah, with my TSPC racer, I'm at overall strength at like in the low 30s, 30 to 35, and I've turned the dampening way down, which for me makes a bigger difference because I can feel the weight transfer more because it's not making that constant, that damping.
The in ACC damping.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, I've never, and mine was like at 100 or something, I think. Like by default.
Yeah, it was up there. I turned the road effects up, so it gave it a little more life. So I'll understand all those things, contribute to your experience. I find that to me, the standout, this is going to be an odd point, is the brakes. In my video, I mentioned this, but I don't really explain it, so people kind of I think some people misunderstood what I was saying. I adjust my brakes in the other sims to get the most out of my brake.
Okay.
But in ACC in particular, this is the most realistic brake I've felt in a sim. Like I have to push on the brake.
Right.
I can actually utilize the brake, and it's actually taken me a little bit. It took me a little bit to kind of get used to how much I could actually use the brake, because in a race car, you push on the brake hard,
right,
going into the corners.
Right.
You don't lightly push on the brake and get the car to rotate and all that. No, you push on it. And
this game demands that.
Yeah, Steve, I went and looked in the ratings, but it explains what they do, but it doesn't explain where they apply is all. So it does a good job of, when you go into that screen, sorry, I jumped ship on the topic, but
that's fine.
It goes into that screen and it tells you what each thing is and what it's judging you on. But it to me, it doesn't tell you like why. Why does any of this matter? Is it supposed to be is it supposed to matter? Is it supposed to matter for your single player, multiplayer? Mike has chimed in and said it does go to your multiplayer, which is, nice to know. It's an interesting take, but that's okay. There was a couple other things. Spatial career modes are too complicated. I find they aren't complicated enough. I want more. To me, this is the busy work I don't care for. I want something that means something. So I am not a person that just likes to drive races for a career mode. I can do that single race. Like,
right.
If I really want to pick my own car, my own track and all that, that's a single race. I don't need a career mode to make me do that. The other
Sure.
thing I thought that was odd was that you don't get a choice of paint or livery schemes. It's just whatever car you pick, that's the scheme that you get.
All right, there was
I thought
sub
that was kind of
paints.
short-sighted.
Like once you had the team had like 8 paints or 6 paint or a handful of
No,
paints.
well, no, that's when you pick an actual team. When you're
Oh,
doing your own team in
oh,
career mode,
right.
I did not find, maybe I'm wrong. I have to look at it again, but I did not find anything to let you choose different paint schemes in there.
No, you're right. You're right. Because when I was doing it, I ended up I just kept pressing go, and then I just randomly stopped, and I ended up with the Nissan GTR. But yeah, there was no second pick on that one. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, so that's a little odd. That just some of the design choices to me are a little odd. I actually don't mind the UI in it. Some people really don't seem to like it at all. I don't mind it. I do think it gives shades of console. Whatever.
No,
It's
I
not
thought
that
it was easy to
big a deal.
navigate though. It was very
Yeah,
simple. It was
the
simple.
only thing that I find that's not is you have to hit pause to change your field of view and your car, seat settings and all that, which is I think a little unintuitive. Each car doesn't have their own force feedback. So now you have a global that, depending on the car, you may have to adjust. And that's a
Right.
little bit of pain in the butt because that means when you go back to another car, it doesn't save that one, goes and does something else. What else? What else was there?
So, how are your feelings of having a measuring device, judging device, flashing you green and red colors, judging your
I kind of
driving?
like it.
I loved it.
I kind that's going back to that thing that I talked about earlier. I kind of like that, showing me where I was deficient and where I was good. And like all of a sudden you get like this impressive and then you
Yeah.
get okay, but sloppy kind of, those. I actually liked it. It taught me like the points at where it thought I could improve.
Yes.
I don't mind. I actually liked it. It kept me driving to see if I could do better.
Oh, I would drive and I'd do something wrong and it would go red. And I'd be like, oh. And then I'd be like super sharp for the next few laps. And here's the other thing that I loved about it. Unlike a safety rating in iRacing, for an example, if you just drive slow, it's like, dude, you're doing it. You need to be at the right pace as well, or it's going to give you red. So you can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to drive around clean and, spike
Right.
my rating.
No, you got to go.
Yeah, you got to go. Because when I was at the race, I just didn't want to make a mistake. And so I'm just being very cautious. And I don't want to go off track because it's going to be red. I don't want to spin out. It's going to go red. I don't want to jump a curb. It's going to go red. And so I'm doing that. I'm just kind of cruising. And I'm like looking over and it's all red. And it's like inadequate pace or something. I can't remember the wording it gave me. And it was like, oh, no, that's even worse. I loved it. I thought it was really fun and beneficial to getting the most out of the sim, perhaps. I've had a good time. So you were a late buyer of the game. Are you glad you bought it? I mean, without doing a review, I mean, you put
I am
6 hours.
I'm happy with the money that I paid for it. The $44 mark or whatever it was, $45. And I think it's fine. I think that if you're a GT3 fan, see, this is the hard part because I see it's so divisive on whether people like the driving in it or not. And I'm still discovering things as I go. That's why I said this is not just I drive one or two cars and I kind of have an idea how the sim is working and the feedback that it's giving me. It's varying so much from car to car. Like I found the Bentley gave me tremendous force feedback. And like I said, I drove the McLaren and there was hardly any. So I don't know, is that a bug? Is that by design because of the information that it's being given? Is there a problem? Did it just not get designed correctly? And kind of to segue, unless you have any more thoughts on ACC, I'm trying to think if I missed anything else. Yeah, so I like what I've tried, but I can totally understand people not liking it based on their force feedback preferences.
Okay.
If your argument is it's too easy, I think your description is actually very accurate to what a GT and any modern race car should be. You should have, if you know how to drive, you should have decent pace to begin with.
Right.
The hard part is always eking out that last 5 to maybe 10% of what the car is actually capable of doing and finding that threshold. And to me, I actually found that when I made a mistake, like with the Aston or the Bentley or the Jaguar, that was me. I made the mistake, not, oh my God, what happened? Where when I drove the McLaren, I was like, whoa, what happened to the car there? So it's a very interesting case study, and I'm curious if that is solely driven by the data and not any sort of manipulation to help some of the cars have a better feeling.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yep. It's also, I mean, this is the downside, in my opinion, of their rollout. Their rollout being this progression over time where we get it also means that I can't give them that normal exemption that I give every software company, which is, sure, it comes out. And when something comes out, I expect there to be issues. And that mainly being that their control group was a control group.
I expect there to be small bugs.
Yeah. But when you do a rollout like they've done, they've already been able to get a lot of feedback on cars, tracks, handling model, force feedback, bugs, crashes, all of these things. So I have a little less tolerance at this point in time, but I normally would say, hey, it's only right now they're getting their first real response. I'm sure there will be adjustments made to everything that we just talked about and named. The question I think that from what I've heard feedback from the community, the big one, because I haven't tried it yet, is the disappointment in VR. So
yeah, I heard that was not stellar.
I've heard it's less than even cool, but I haven't tried it myself just yet. I've also heard a lot of people complaining because this is not something that was added, which everyone was hoping for, was proper triple screen support. So yes, I run in triples, but if you think back to Assetto Corsa, you had the whole ability to like set your angles, set your distance, get the stretch and the bend and all that stuff just right. None of that's there. It's much more like being in a simplistic, a console port type game where you're lucky that they gave you triples almost. But because they've done it in the past, I hope for the future. And I think VR, I would think it's hard to develop for VR right now because VR is going through a half leap or half advance. I'm not going to call it a full advance just yet.
Right. It's so all over the place with all the different headsets that you can get. And now, you have everything from a Pimax to a DK1 that's still being used. Yeah. Like you've got such a spread and such a small, not super small. And I don't mean this as a pejorative. I'm just saying a smaller group that uses VR. Like it's got to be not the easiest thing to implement across the board very well to begin with. That I hate to say it. That's why I stick with a single monitor, ultra wide.
Right.
Because I know not every title supports triples, and I know not every title supports VR, and that is part of my decision. It's by design. That's part of my decision making there.
Well, there's something to be said about not trying to be on that leading edge, technology edge, because it's a problematic area. You look at a company like NASA, like Formula One teams, they're gonna throw caution to the wind and they're gonna try the newest, latest thing to get any advantage they can, because without those advantages, they lose. But NASA's trying to get somebody to the moon and back, and there's no playing around, right? So they use tried and true, proven technology, stuff that's already made it to the point where, like right now in the world of VR, from a developer standpoint, I feel like we're in the days of Betamax versus VHS. And it's like, well, Am I going to do both? Am I going to favor one when I don't know who's going to win the battle? And in the end, VHS won the war. Betamax disappeared for the most part. Laserdisc, whatever. But everybody was making movies for VHS, and then the quality started to get better because now we had a mainstream way of doing this. And I think at some point in the VR world, I'm not saying that there'll be a proprietary, this is the way they all do it, but they'll get closer to where there's less variances in what
narrow
each
the
unit.
scope.
Yeah, they have to, or the industry will fail. I mean, they can't make developers deal with 10 different ways of doing VR.
Right. Same thing happened in, I know this is, for most people, this is obscure, but slot cars went digital. So you had analog cars, traditional, same car stays in the slot. Then you had digital, where you could run some up to 6. Now you got up to 24 cars on a track, and they switch lanes at designated points on the track. So a bunch of cars can literally run in the same lane.
Right.
The problem was everybody came up with their own idea, and that severely hurt it taking off.
Right.
And it is still trying to recover. This is like 10 or 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it still isn't the preferred way to play because A, it's more complex. You have to retrofit a bunch of stuff. You know, so any older cars you have to retrofit those things.
Right.
It's more expensive.
Right.
And there's nothing universal. They've gotten better about paring down. Now there's a couple companies that work with each other that make it more universal. But the problem is there's no set standard, and that's what VR is reminding me of, is the same struggles they had in the slot car industry with going digital. It's cool. If you love the digital aspect, it is something really neat to try. There's still something very appealing about one car in a lane versus another car in another lane, and you trying to figure out where your advantages are and how hard you can drive into the corner.
Right.
So to a degree, that's what the state of VR reminds. And unfortunately, Dirt Rally 2.0, no VR support still.
Yep.
And now ACC, you know, I understand it's because of the Unreal Engine, but they made that choice.
Right.
You know, Kunos made that choice. They chose to do that. So it's still up to them.
My favorite game on planet Earth
is VR is implemented in that. So
my favorite game on planet Earth is Robo Recall, and it is an Unreal Engine game. Just saying. My favorite VR game on Earth is Robo Recall. Which if you have VR and you haven't played Robo Recall, you're missing out, because everything else I've played is so far behind that game in the VR experience. Sorry, total another distraction. We're not even going to get to our. We had a spin-off from Assetto Corsa.
We can briefly touch on it because we've kind of already hit upon it.
All right.
But why don't you read that real quick and then
where do we have that question?
I don't remember.
I don't have. So Tom Jones sent this to us, right?
Yes.
Tom Jones a while ago had posed the question to Billy and I, and I'm going to get it all wrong here, but the basic gist was force feedback. Can it hide or fix, essentially, the driving experience of the quality of a sim racing title? So throw physics out the window or keep them in, because this is sort of that fine line of what Tom's talking about, I think. Like, you could make a game that has no physics number crunching going on whatsoever and still give a game great force feedback and make it a very playable title. So, for example, if they were to make a modern Mario Kart for the PC utilizing force feedback, it doesn't need to have physics in order to give you that driving experience of oversteer, understeer, lockup, all those other type of things. So that would be the extreme case that way. You have other cases where sometimes the physics are actually tied to the force feedback, or could be or should be. But with Assetto Corsa, you talked a lot about force feedback. How much do you feel? When Dirt Rally, we talked about force feedback was one of the big hits of the game out of the box. How big a factor do you feel it is? How much can force feedback correct a crap game? And how much can force feedback ruin a great game?
Well, see, I think that goes to a larger issue. How much are opinions are formed by the things that we started with, that somebody said, the sim or game or whatever you want to say gave to us, and we got used to that. And so from now on, that is my benchmark across all these other sims that I'm going to try. I think if you were to level the playing field without force feedback, everybody has their physics. Get rid of the force feedback. No, I'm not advocating for getting rid of force feedback. I'm making a point here. People are going to get upset. I'm not saying get rid of force feedback, but what I'm saying is if you got rid of the force feedback, I think you would actually figure out what physics actually work and what don't, rather than the force feedback giving you less or more information based upon what you have been accustomed to. Again, I go back to RC cars. We don't have force feedback when we race RC cars, but we can feel that thing's not digging in right. It's not turning in right. We're not getting the right feeling from the car. We can't feel anything, but it's what our eyes are telling us. This is the same thing.
And
our
doesn't
eyes are telling us.
your brain does that computation? Like,
yep.
People laugh at me for putting a lot of body English into my sim racing.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, in my opinion, what's really going on when I'm doing that is my body is filling in what's missing from all the senses it's getting. And so with that one missing piece, it's like Jurassic Park when they're sequencing the genes to, from a lizard to fill in the holes. My brain was filling in those holes with fake G-forces that weren't really happening in this room, but were happening to my body, so to speak. And I think the same thing when you do an RC car, and you're, like you said, you end up to the point where you feel what's going on in the car, and you use a word like feeling, and it's like you can't feel it. That's impossible.
I do the same thing with slot cars. I can watch it and go, well, it feels like the car's not hooking up here. I need to do X, Y, and Z, put more weight in the rear. I need to let the car unload on the inside because I have to wait too long to get on the throttle. I think what would happen is if you did this to sim racing across all of them right now, you would have a better understanding of which sim actually does which one correctly, because you would be forced to interpret. Your brain would then need to interpret what's on the screen. I'm not saying get rid of force feedback. I'm just saying in this example, the question is, if we eliminated force feedback, what would that do? And what would that tell us about each sim? And I think it'd tell you a lot. It'd tell you how much force feedback affects your enjoyment of a sim, right? It's those added layers. Force feedback gives you those added layers. Do I want to drive without force feedback? No. I did a whole 24 hours of Le Mans stint driving without force feedback. It was a little nerve-wracking, but it can be done. So that's I think it's a great question. I think it's a very interesting question as far as I wonder which one I would really gel with if I drove every sim and eliminated all the force feedback. I wonder how my brain would then interpret the physics telling me this feels right, this doesn't feel right, I cannot sense the car when it does this, versus the force feedback giving me that information. And like you said, is the force feedback actually covering up something that the physics aren't doing? I don't know. I'm not sure, because we know that going from iRacing to like an Assetto Corsa or something, the feedback is decidedly different that the wheel is giving you.
Sure.
So
I wonder,
what does it do?
This is going to sound so weird to me saying it, but I wonder if driving without force feedback and learning to maximize your skills without would actually make you faster. Because, and let's face it, and you and I've said or made these accusations of our favorite hobby here, sim racing. It's just a computer game, right? It's just ones and zeros, and it's just equations. This is not real life. This is not real life physics. And the real trick to sim racing has nothing to do with driving skill. It comes up with a logarithm that counters the game's equation perfectly. And is force feedback even a huge giant distraction and preventing you from seeing that real equation of what the game really needs? I mean, I think back to when I played games before peripherals with like a keyboard, right? And if you were playing like a NASCAR game, you knew it was like 20 clicks to get around that corner. You knew it like
Right, you're
a
gaming.
drummer knows
At that
his
point, you're
beat.
gaming the system, right?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, because this is really just a computer, this really is just a game. The heart and soul of it is no different to this day. It can't be. It never will be. It's just a computer. And again, force feedback could be this giant mask, damping. It could be a huge damping mechanism on your ability to find that equation of what is the absolute amount of clicks it needed to make that turn, or clicks of brake to make that braking zone. I'd be very
I've always
interested to see
that if you want to figure out what you actually can do with a car on a track, drive with the minimal to almost no force feedback, and you will learn the limits of the car much easier than driving with a ton of force feedback, the wheel fighting you. You can always add it in later.
right. Oh, I think
You know,
who typed? Somebody said your brain would clip. My brain would fill in that void. So I know for a fact, because I used to run without a force feedback wheel, that I go into Kung Fu grip and I start to create mental force feedback resistance in the wheel starts happening.
You learn how to. It was the same thing when I last year, which by the way, we're out of time, but during the 24-hour last year, when I went into I have no force feedback, my brain went into look at all the visual cues, what's on the track, and just be smooth with the wheel. Don't make big movements, don't get jerky, just do enough.
Yep.
And let the visual cues tell you what you're doing.
Yep.
So it is possible. Is it preferable? No. I still want some force feedback in there because I don't want the wheel to feel dead. I've gotten too used to there being something there.
Well, I'm doing this for fun too, right?
Yeah,
and
the
force
level of
feedback's
immersion, right? To get that level of immersion, you want that force feedback. So this is relatable because I found that depending on the car in ACC, the force feedback is very different, and that could really impact your enjoyment of the sim itself.
Yeah, definitely. And just to finish on Tom, you brought up the question. He said, I always wondered when someone says X sim has terrible force feedback physics, do they really mean the force feedback, or vice versa? Even in my mind. So, great topic. I mean, we don't have an answer on such thing. Yes, mini aliens run zero or very, very, very little force feedback. My recommendation is force feedback on an excessive level is slowing you down for sure.
It is.
So
absolutely.
You need to be able to turn that wheel quick. I think every driver in real life racing would want their wheel to turn even quicker than the car will allow, because quick release.
That could be debatable because I've actually, in my own race car, I've actually had problems with the steering being too quick.
Right.
And I actually wasn't the particular steering, off on a tangent real quick. The steering gears that was actually too easy for me to steer. I actually needed a little more resistance. So there is a point of no return.
Right.
It is so preferential, personally based that it's hard to give a straight answer. But you definitely don't want the steering to inhibit you.
Right.
While you're running.
Sure.
And if you were I had a broken steering gears, and you want to talk about not being able to turn. I mean, you're just wrestling the car into the corner because you lost all assists in the steering.
Right.
And your arms were noodles by the end, and you're just like, oh my goodness. I know I wasn't driving as fast as I could because the wheel was so heavy.
Right.
And that's real life.
Sure.
So it's no different in the sim. People laugh. I use the TSPC Racer, and I'm like, it's got way more force feedback than I'll ever use. And people are like, oh my God, it's not strong enough. I'm all, you've put way too much force feedback. In my opinion, you've got way too much force feedback going on. Then you are actually going slower because of it.
Right.
I'm down. Most sims, I'm down in sim. I'm down into like the 30 to 40 range, sometimes even a little lower. And sometimes that is even too much.
Yep.
On iRacing, I think pardon me, I think I'm down at like 4.
Right. Yeah.
3 to 4, somewhere in that range.
With some of the big force feedback motors, like even the Fanatic wheel that I'm testing, we're getting to such a little amount on the force feedback that I'm running out of like variants because I'm inside of 2. So it's like, move the dial a little bit and it's not,
Right.
and it's like I am running. I mean, it's like if I'm not even using that upper 98%, I can just use a magnifying lens to look at that 2%. So I can now have a little more dial in ability in that range because I literally am using that little. For sure. I don't use a lot of force feedback. I don't like strong force feedback. I will use it and I'll enjoy it, and then I'll start sweating and getting tired and realize, wait, what am I doing to myself? But I was having fun, so I went along with it. So, all right, we better bring this one to the end. We're over, and now we're just babbling.
Right.
Anything special
hey.
beyond your gig or beyond your recording?
No, just trying to get that done. I'm going to still work on ACC, try to get part 2 out in the next, 2-3 days. People seem to already enjoy that format, so I appreciate anybody that's watched it already. I'm enjoying reading everybody's comments, and I appreciate it. Other than that, no, you guys, however, have a race.
iRacing 24-hour Le Mans starts tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. The guys were like, oh, who's going to qualify? And everyone took a step back. So I'm qualifying the car. I'm starting the car. Our superstar, David Grunnell, just upgraded to VR and is not quite race ready in VR. So we're going to take a big hit missing David. We'll miss you, David, for sure. But we understand what you're going through with that. We have a party car tomorrow. I like to call it a party car. We always seem to be right between 1 and 2 cars. And just a couple people couldn't make it in the end. And it's like, all right, we need to go to 1 car. Because I don't want everyone to have to drive 6 hours. It's like...
Well, it's not just driving 6 hours. You also have to be on top of it for other people. So that means you're putting in more hours than just your 6 of driving.
Yeah. So we just decided that we're not competing at that level. Like, we're doing it to compete, but we're doing it to have fun. So keeping a big team, keeping the load light, making it so there's always somebody at a spot, always a group to hang out and watch the race with, will make it fun. So that starts tomorrow at 5 a.m., runs all the way to Sunday at 5 a.m. We're in the BMW GT3 car. Should be exciting. We've got a lot of great drivers. GTE, sorry. I don't even know the difference officially between GT3 and
GTE is more power. I don't think they have ABS in GTEs, and there's a couple differences, but
okay.
Yeah.
They look the same.
M8 versus the M6. They're the same car.
I'm gonna get hammered for those things.
I'm gonna be tuning in. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Should be cool. So that's going to do it for this week. Hopefully next week we'll be back with a full-length show. Hopefully, well, you never know. We'll keep you informed. Yeah. But that's going to do it for this one.
Shouldn't have any issues.
Nah, get out there, do some sim racing, have some fun. Be sure to let me know if you were running that 24, how you and your team did, just so I can know how our fans are doing, how the people who watch the show and what they're doing and what they're driving. And always be sure to let us know of any topics that you think we should cover here on the Beyond the Sim. Happy Friday, everybody. Like I said, get out and do some racing. This is Beyond the Sim. I'm Shaun Cole. That's Billy Strange. And we'll see you on the track.